After the huge success of Tamagotchi, Bandai immediately started coming up with ways to capitalize on the concept. As we saw last time, many Tamagotchi versions would get made, but it was also decided that a spin-off series should be made that was geared more towards boys. I've always found that line of thought a bit odd, because boys definitely had no issues playing with Tamagotchi, but we ended up with something great as a result. In this second episode of A Brief History of Digimon V-Pets, we are covering the Digital Monster. Released in Japan in 1997, though outside of Japan it was primarily referred to by its shorthand name, Digimon. Instead of raising cute little blob characters like you did with Tamagotchi, Digimon was all about raising monsters who live on File Island, to take into battle against your friends. Now this device here is my original Digital Monster, which I believe I got in 1998, if my memory can be trusted that far back. As you can see, it's taken a beating over time, but it still works. The interface is almost identical to the Tamagotchi, with a 32x16 screen, 8 icons, and 3 buttons, but it uses a landscape orientation, has a broken cage to really emphasize that you are a tamer, and has these very important connectors at the top. This was how you would connect to other devices to battle, and it's how modern Digimon V-Pets still communicate to this day, meaning I can fight this device against this Digital Monster version 20th, released in 2017, with no issues. The battle aspect was a really cool touch, and definitely gave you motivation to raise something strong enough to beat your friend's Digimon. Not all Digimon were equal either, so certain Digimon would be more likely to win than others. When it came to raising, you still had feeding, healing, cleaning poop, and sleeping, but playing and happiness were replaced with training and strength. The first Digital Monster version featured a game called Shadow Boxing, where you would guess whether your shadow would block high or low. In this case, the shadow went high, so I chose to go low. The more you trained, the stronger your Digimon would become, via an invisible stat called effort. You could also increase effort through pills, Digimon's equivalent of a snack, but this would make your Digimon more susceptible to injuries after battle, and would quickly increase your weight. The concept of raising and battling monsters that change forms over time may sound familiar, and it should. Many comparisons have been made to a certain other franchise involving similar ideas, Pokémon. This of course leads to a common misconception that Digimon was inspired by Pokémon, but if you know a little bit about Japanese culture, especially for young boys, then you might discover a common ancestor between the two that explains how they came to be. First, beetle fighting. Maybe you've noticed how a lot of Japanese media feature beetles in some way, especially stag and rhinoceros beetles. These are very recognized insects in Japan because it's not uncommon for kids to collect beetle grubs, raise them, and have them fight against the beetles raised by their friends. Kabuterimon and Kuwagamon, Heracross and Pinsir, Metabee and Rokusho, these are just a few examples of characters that stem from this practice. The other major influence? Monsters, of course. Kaiju have been a major part of Japanese culture since Godzilla first hit the silver screen, so using them as the basis of a franchise just comes naturally. Going back to the stats menu, we can see Digimon weight was originally recorded in pounds before switching over to gigabytes to emphasize their digital nature. Discipline has been replaced with energy, or DP, and this is how much a Digimon is able to fight before it gets tired. Then we have the victory screen, which shows the percentage of battles you won, which is very important for evolution. One small improvement that made a big difference was the rearranging of the icons. Now, instead of the seemingly random order of the Tamagotchi icons, they were laid out in order of frequency of use. Your stat icon was first, which is much better than it being sixth, since you will check your stat screen on a regular basis. There were 5 versions of the Digital Monster series made, each containing Digimon that would be featured heavily in the upcoming card games, video games, and of course, anime. Well, there was technically a 6th version, but this was a unique pet released exclusively in the Southeast Asia and Australian markets, and was basically a modified Digimon Pendulum 1.0, but we're going to focus on the Japanese versions in this video. It's also worth noting that in the United States, where I live, versions 3 through 5 were never released, so we only had 2 versions to choose from. Each of these versions had a roster similar to that of the Tamagotchi, with the 1 Baby 1 and Baby 2 Digimon, and 2 Child Digimon, but 7 adult Digimon instead of 6, and 3 Perfect Digimon instead of 1 secret character. Perfects weren't as hard to get as secret characters either, as every adult Digimon could evolve into a Perfect Digimon if the proper conditions were met. As with the Tamagotchi, the Digimon you would get would be determined by a number of factors. As before, taking good or bad care of your Digimon's needs was vital. Good care leads to what was called regular growth, while bad care was called irregular growth. Apart from that, how much you train, overfeed, and disturb sleep could affect evolution. For Agumon to become this Tyrannomon, for example, he needed irregular growth with plenty of overfeeding, a little training, and few sleep disturbances. For the version 1, we of course have Agumon as one of the child Digimon, who would go on to become the mascot for the series. With good care, it could become Greymon like you might expect, but evolution lines were not straight lines like they often are in the anime. In addition to Greymon, Agumon could become Tyrannomon, Devimon, Meramon, or Numemon. If I win enough battles with my Tyrannomon, it will be able to further evolve into Mamemon. At this point in the franchise, the perfect stage was the last stage. Ultimate wouldn't be introduced until later. Some of the Digimon you may recognize from the anime that made their debut on these pets are Angemon, Ogremon, and Leomon, but they initially evolved from Gabumon, Patamon, and Piomon. Gabumon could also become Garurumon, but Patamon and Piomon could not become Angemon and Birdramon, respectively, like they could in the show, as they were on separate devices. When it comes to Digimon evolutions, nothing is set in stone. Palmon was another of the show's main characters that first debuted on the digital monster, but it would be some time before Togemon was even created. A large number of the rest of the Digimon from the digital monster series would make the appearances in the original anime, especially in the first 2 arcs, as both allies and enemies. We'll get to the focus of the 3rd and 4th arcs in the next video. You may also notice that a lot of the pixel art used for the Digimon doesn't exactly match up with the drawn artwork. This is because, for the most part, the pixel art was created before the drawn artwork, meaning several liberties and interpretations were used in creating the final design. Andromon is one of my favorite examples of a design ending up looking very different from the pixel art. As the foundation of the series, the influence of the digital monster doesn't stop at the anime. It was the major basis for the first card and video games as well. The card game mechanics came directly from the pet, featuring lifespans as if you were raising a Digimon, regular and irregular growth for evolution, and even winning percentages. The evolutions themselves would largely be pulled directly from the pets as well, such as how Skull Greymon could evolve from Angemon, Birdramon, or Kabuterimon. The first Digimon game released was the Japan-only Digital Monster version S for the Sega Saturn, which was a pretty straightforward virtual pet simulator based on the first 4 versions with some modifications. Though the big game was Digimon World, released on the PlayStation 1, which was a full realization of VPET mechanics in a 3D world and remains a beloved title to this day. There was definitely a lot to say in this episode, and I didn't cover every little thing, but I hope I've been able to show just how big this little device really is. No matter what your favorite part of the Digimon franchise is, it wouldn't be around without the virtual pet that started it all. Of course, there was another Digimon virtual pet that would further refine the series before Digimon majorly expanded, and we'll be going over that series next time. If you want to see more videos in this series, please consider subscribing so that you will know as soon as another is released. Until next time, bye.